To achieve true happiness, we must be courageous to accept that not everyone will always like us. This is an important step that we often avoid. As humans, we have the incredible ability to create the life we want, but we often get stuck in the mindset that our future is predetermined by what happened in the past. Imagine you're riding an old motorcycle. The engine breaks down often, and the performance is poor, but you're used to it. You know how to handle it, so you keep riding it. However, imagine if you dared to choose a new motorcycle that is faster, more efficient, and brings many new possibilities. The challenge? You don't fully know how to control the bike, you're not familiar with its features and functions. Often, we prefer to stay on the familiar path, even if it's unsatisfying, just because it's safer. But if we continue like that, we reject new possibilities and a better future. The past is not the final arbiter of our lives. We are in control of changing it. Daring to step out of your comfort zone means opening yourself up to greater opportunities. With this courage, you can create the life you want without being trapped in fear of what others might say. So are you ready to take the first step towards a more fulfilling and authentic life? Hello everyone, my name is August. Welcome to our Shift Perspective podcast, where we discuss a book that has inspired millions of people around the world, a work that challenges common notions of happiness and personal freedom. The courage to be disliked invites us to dare to live according to our own beliefs, unshackled by the expectations or judgments of others. Get ready to experience a different perspective on courage, life, and self-acceptance. For those who are not familiar, this book is a bestseller that has sold more than 3.5 million copies across Asia. The book is so popular that there's even a TV series. The book's thinking was influenced by Alfred Adler, who was one of the most famous psychologists of the 19th century. The book, The Courage to be Disliked, is a dialogue between a philosopher and a young man that presents Alfred Adler's individual psychology. The philosopher challenges the young man's views, which are largely shaped by traditional psychology and societal norms. Through their conversations, they explore key Adlerian concepts such as the separation of tasks, community feeling, and the importance of self-acceptance. The book encourages readers to question their beliefs about interpersonal relationships, the nature of freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. The authors argue that by adopting an Adlerian perspective, individuals can overcome the burdens of past experiences and gain the courage to live authentically and in harmony with themselves and others. Let's embark on this thought adventure, and who knows, maybe this is the first step towards changing your life. So, put on your headsets and let's start our review of The Courage to be Disliked.
Ever feel like you are stuck replaying the same old patterns? Well, get ready to break free because today we're diving into a book that's equal parts fascinating and challenging.
The Courage to be Disliked.
That's the one. Now, I gotta say, what makes this book so unique is its format.
It's a dialogue almost like a philosophical sparring match between a young skeptic and a seasoned advocate of Adlerian psychology.
Yes. It's like eavesdropping on an intense therapy session, but in a good way. You can tell this isn't some dry academic treatise on Adler. There's a real rawness to it.
And that's intentional. That dialogue format is a nod to the Socratic dialogues, a key influence on Adler's thinking.
It's designed to make you think critically, challenge assumptions, and engage in a real back and forth, just like the characters in the book.
Exactly, just like we're doing right now.
Which is the perfect way to approach Adlerian psychology itself, right?
Absolutely.
It's all about questioning what we think we know about ourselves and our problems. Okay, so for our listener who might be new to this whole thing, what's the key takeaway, the big aha moment?
We are not prisoners of our past.
Okay.
Adler throws out that whole past is destiny idea.
Right.
He says we're not defined by our childhood traumas or past experiences.
Okay, I've heard that before, but it's a lot easier said than done, right?
It is.
The courage to be disliked doesn't sugarcoat it either. There's this part where the young guy is basically like, hold on, are you saying my friend's crippling fear of public speaking isn't because of his strict upbringing? And the philosopher hits him with this analogy.
Well, the doctor blaming the patient's cold on their clothing choice.
Yeah.
It's brilliant because it's so absurd. Yet we've all experienced that kind of misplaced blame.
Totally. And that's where Adler's concept of teleology comes in.
Exactly.
Instead of getting lost in analyzing the past for causes, Adler says, let's focus on the present goal of the behavior. Even if it's unconscious, what is the person trying to achieve with their anxiety, their procrastination, their need to be right all the time?
Right. It's not about minimizing real pain or dismissing the impact of past experiences.
Right.
But about shifting our focus to what we can control, our present choices, our goals, and how we interpret those experiences.
It's incredibly empowering, but also a little daunting, right? Because it puts the responsibility squarely on us.
It does.
And this leads us to another core Adlerian principle that the book tackles head on. All problems are relationship problems. Now, that definitely made me raise an eyebrow at first.
It does sound like a sweeping generalization, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Surely some anxieties are personal, existential even.
Right.
But as the dialogue unfolds, you start to see the brilliance of Adler's reasoning.
The book does a fantastic job of illustrating this through the characters' interactions, especially around the very relatable experience of feeling inferior. I mean, who hasn't felt inadequate at some point, especially when comparing themselves to others?
And that comparison, that's the crux of the relationship issue.
Okay.
Adler argues that feelings of inferiority aren't inherent. They're subjective interpretations we make based on how we perceive ourselves in relation to others.
So it's not that we're born feeling inferior, but that we learn to see ourselves that way through our interactions. It's a huge shift in perspective.
Exactly. And this ties into another major theme that the book explores in depth, the desire for recognition.
Okay.
We all crave acceptance, validation, to be liked.
Yeah.
Right. But Adler suggests that if we're not careful, this desire could become a trap, even a prison.
100%. We've all contorted ourselves trying to please others, to fit in.
Yes.
The book even goes so far as to call it living a lie, trying to fulfill someone else's expectations instead of honoring our own.
And that's where things get really interesting, because to break free from this trap, Adler says we need the courage to be disliked.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. That title is not clickbait, my friend. When I first read that, I was floored, really disliked. On purpose. Isn't the whole point of, life to be liked, to build strong relationships?
The common misconception. The courage to be disliked isn't advocating for being cruel or pushing people away.
Okay.
It's about having the courage to live authentically, to prioritize your values, even when you know it might rub some people the wrong way.
Okay.
And the book does a beautiful job of illustrating this with a personal story from the philosopher himself.
You're talking about the story about his strained relationship with his father, right?
Yes.
Man, that was powerful. It really drove home the point that sometimes clinging to the need for approval, even from family, can prevent us from living a truly authentic and connected life. That story really underscores how challenging this whole courage to be disliked thing can be. It's like, how do we reconcile that with our human need for connection, for belonging? The book dives into this too, right?
Absolutely. And it's where Adler introduces another key concept that might seem contradictory at first.
Okay.
Separation of tasks.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Right.
Because initially it sounds a little cold, like we're building walls instead of bridges.
I could see why you'd think that, but it's actually quite the opposite. Separation of tasks is about recognizing that we are only responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Okay.
We can't control how others perceive us or what they choose to do.
So it's about setting healthy boundaries, not emotional detachment.
Precisely. It's about asking that crucial question, whose task is this? If it's not yours to carry, let it go. The book gives some really relatable examples.
Okay.
Like a parent obsessing over their child's grades, or a coworker constantly trying to micromanage a project.
Oh, those hit close to home. We've all been in situations where we felt responsible for someone else's happiness or had someone try to control our decisions.
And it's a recipe for resentment, burnout, and strained relationships. Separation of tasks is about stepping back, recognizing our own lane, and allowing others the freedom to do the same.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this ties into the courage to be disliked.
Okay.
If we're constantly worried about pleasing others, meeting their expectations, we'll never truly step into our own power.
Exactly. That constant need for approval keeps us tethered to other people's opinions, preventing us from discovering who we are and what we're truly capable of.
It's like we're living someone else's life, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for us.
And that's a recipe for unhappiness, even if on the surface everything looks successful. The courage to be disliked reminds us that true freedom comes from aligning our actions with our own values, even if it means some people won't be on board with that journey.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does this all connect to that other big Adlerian idea we touched on earlier, community feeling? Because on the surface, it sounds like we're talking about individualism, not belonging.
That's where it gets really interesting. Adler argues that true community feeling, that sense of belonging and interconnectedness, doesn't come from seeking approval or trying to be liked by everyone. It comes from a sense of contributing, of feeling useful, and adding value to something larger than ourselves.
So it's less about being the life of the party and more about finding our unique way to contribute, to be of service.
Exactly. The book acknowledges that this idea of a larger scheme can be a bit overwhelming.
Right.
It uses the example of a student feeling lost and insignificant within the confines of their school.
Right. Their world feels small, suffocating even.
Yes.
But then the philosopher reminds them that there's a vast world outside those school walls, a wider community where they can find their place.
It's a powerful reminder that our sense of belonging isn't limited to our immediate surroundings.
Right.
We can choose to connect with something bigger, something more meaningful to us. And that's where the courage to be disliked plays a crucial role.
Because if we're constantly worried about what our classmates, our family, or even that random person on the internet thinks we'll never break free from that limited view of ourselves and the world.
Precisely. We need that courage to step outside of our comfort zones, to pursue our passions, even if they don't make sense to others, to risk criticism in order to make a real difference.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, but let's bring it down to earth a bit.
Yes.
The book doesn't just throw these big philosophical ideas at us and leave us hanging, right? It also offers some practical tools for actually applying these principles.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful distinctions it makes is between praise and encouragement.
Yes. The book makes a compelling case for why traditional praise, while well-intentioned, can actually be counterproductive.
It's a tough pill to swallow because we're conditioned to think that praise is essential for building self-esteem and motivation. But Adlerian psychology suggests that praise, especially the good job kind, can create a dependence on external validation and undermine intrinsic motivation.
So instead of saying good job to a child who cleans their room, a parent following Adlerian principles might say,
They might express genuine appreciation by saying something like, "Thank you for creating a peaceful space for us to enjoy."
that's a really subtle but powerful shift, isn't it?
Absolutely. Praise focuses on judgment and evaluation, often from a place of authority.
Right.
Encouragement, on the other hand, focuses on effort and contribution, acknowledging the other person's agency and empowering them to act from a place of internal motivation.
It's about shifting from a vertical relationship where someone is better than to a more horizontal one where everyone is equal, even if roles are different.
Exactly. And this applies to all relationships with our partners, friends, colleagues, even strangers we interact with.
Right.
The courage to be disliked encourages us to be mindful of how we communicate and to choose encouragement over praise whenever possible.
Such a valuable takeaway. And it leads us beautifully into the big question this book tackles head on. What is happiness and how do we actually achieve it?
The book's answer, while deceptively simple, is incredibly profound. Happiness is the feeling of usefulness, of contributing to something larger than ourselves.
Okay, I'll admit at first glance I thought, really? Is that all? But as I sat with it, it really resonated.
It's not about achieving some arbitrary definition of success or accumulating wealth and possessions. It's about that deep internal sense of purpose and knowing that our lives have meaning and impact.
And that feeling of usefulness is intertwined with all these other Adlerian principles we've been exploring, right? It's a natural byproduct of having the courage to be disliked, of practicing separation of tasks, of feeling a sense of belonging within a larger community.
Precisely. It's not a separate destination we strive for, but a state of being that arises from aligning our actions with these principles. And the book concludes with this incredibly powerful anecdote from one of Adler's students who boldly proclaimed,
Wait, remind me again how that anecdote goes. Such a powerful way to end this whole discussion.
This student, after years of studying with Adler, stood up during a lecture and confidently declared, "Those who hear me today can be happy right now."
Whoa, okay, that's a bold statement, like a mic drop moment, right?
Yeah.
So no waiting for the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect whatever. Happiness is available to us, like, in this moment.
That's the radical message at the heart of Adlerian psychology. Happiness isn't some far-off destination or a reward for a life well lived. It's a choice we can make, an attitude we can cultivate, starting right now.
Okay, I'm feeling fired up, but I'm also aware that for our listener, this might be a lot to digest. Where do we even begin to put all this into practice?
I'd say start with that powerful question the courage to be disliked offers. Whose task is this? The next time you feel overwhelmed, resentful, or pressured to take on something that doesn't feel right, just ask yourself, is this truly my responsibility? If it's not, give yourself permission to let it go. You are not responsible for the feelings or choices of others, only for your own.
Such a great reminder. It's so easy to fall into that trap of people-pleasing, thinking it's like the path to happiness. But it's often in letting go of that need for external validation that we stumble upon true freedom and fulfillment.
And as you get comfortable with that question, you'll naturally start noticing other areas of your life where you can apply these principles. It's like a muscle you strengthen over time. You become more aware of those moments when you're seeking recognition for the sake of it, those times when you're trying to be special, instead of embracing the ordinary, amazing reality of who you are.
And as you cultivate that self-acceptance, that deep down confidence in your own worthiness, you naturally become less afraid of being disliked, right? Because you know that your value doesn't hinge on other people's opinions.
Exactly. That's when the real magic happens. You feel a newfound freedom to contribute, to chase your passions, even if they don't make sense to everyone. You start connecting with people from a place of authenticity, not a need for approval. And that's where you find true belonging, a sense of community that resonates at the deepest level.
This has been incredible, but as always, we need to land the plane. For our listener who's now hopefully feeling inspired, maybe a little challenged, what's the one nugget of wisdom from The Courage to be Disliked that we want to leave them with?
Remember, life isn't a mountain to be conquered, but a dance to be danced. It's about embracing the journey, not obsessing over the destination. So I ask you, dear listener, what will your dance look like?
What a question. Make sure to tune in next time as we continue this deep dive. So much to think about. Until then, happy dancing, everyone.
Being comfortable with yourself is a simple way to be happy. Please comment in the comment section on what lessons you learned from reading this book. If you would like to have the book, please order it from the link in the description section of this video. I take my leave. Don't forget to subscribe to the Shift Perspective YouTube channel. Bye-bye.